Hi, my name's Kat, and today Reddit has been asked, people who work in remote places, what is the creepiest thing you've seen or heard? I came across an old shack when I was doing some trail mapping in an old sand and grave mine. I'd been told about it previously, but it still gave off such creepy vibes. I learned later that there were some juvenile turkey vultures growing up inside. If I'd gone in and we had startled each other, I think I would have shat myself. Did a 5-day solo backpacking trip in MT. I was camping on my second night in the middle of the nowhere. Literally nothing around within a day's hike. I heard a wolf start howling nearby, so close that I could feel its howling vibrating in my chest. Then I heard others all around. They weren't as close, but it was still super loud. I felt primal fear. My instincts told me to run immediately. I didn't run. I know wolves don't attack usually. There's only a couple confirmed wolf attacks, but for a couple of seconds, I knew fear like I've never felt before. After the fear subsided, it was really awesome. Wolf howls are amazing. Teek Tiki replied and said, I grew up listening to foxes howling at night. They sound very loud, even though they're a mile away. I miss the fox howl now. Foxes don't make noise in the UK. They learn to be quiet. My grandpa used to be a game warden, and as a park ranger. So you know how they say mountain lions often sound like screaming women? Well, he had the exact opposite happen. One night he was passing through a remote campground he thought was vacant and heard what he thought was a mountain lion. He'd heard them in the area before, so he thought it'd be best if he turned around and got out of there. Then he started hearing what was obviously sobbing and knew it was actually a woman in trouble. He grabbed his gun, radioed for backup, and made his way towards the noise. What he discovered were 3 guys who assaulted and now raping a woman. They fled when he came into view, but were caught by police shortly after. The woman needed medical attention, but had come out okay. He's told me that after all these years he spent in the wilderness, the most frightening things have always been caused by people. Worked at a mental health institution in the country. I worked the overnight shift and had to walk down a long, dark cement corridor that they used for tornadoes to get to the laundry room. I hurried down it because I was 18, pregnant, and afraid of the dark. In the small laundry room, I edged close to the washer and heard and saw the dryer shut and turn on me next to me. I hightailed out of it there. A few other happenings. Old-fashioned TV in the rec room would turn on every night around 2 or 3 AM, plugged directly into a standard wall outlet, no timer. I was doing paperwork while sitting in a chair facing the row of blinders. Saw my co-worker wearing a red shirt standing at the door to my side with my peripheral vision. Ran into her after a report and she was never wearing a red shirt that day. All the rooms are locked and we were the only staff there that night. Drop ceiling panels would fall right in front of me. Before you ask, yes, people have died there. One in particular was a man obsessed with eating things he shouldn't. He snuck into the kitchen behind a staff member and grabbed biscuit dough and swallowed it. It swelled in his throat and he died. I worked at a weigh station for garbage in the middle of nowhere when I was in college. I was in charge of signing in trucks, logging their weights and where they came from and what company in case they dumped anything against EPA regulations. I came into work one morning during the winter. My shift was 4 AM till noon when I'd go to class, and it was pitch black other than the little food lamp at the dump floor, little over 1,000 yards away. I locked the doors and made a coffee before setting in to work on my homework. Then, when I looked across the yard to see someone walking in between the empty truck trailers, it was tall because it came up above the bottom of them. They were roughly about 6 or so feet from the ground because it was of the wheels. And it was just wiggling. I tried to ignore it, thinking that it was just maybe an exhaustion or just a shadow or something, but it was still there for a good 30 minutes. Finally, my first truck of the morning came in and I asked the driver if he saw it too, and he just kind of went pale and got back in his truck as soon as possible before he dumped the load and then left fast as possible. After he left, I noticed that whatever it was gone, but I kept hearing weird noises on the back side of the trailer that was my office. I have no idea what it is, and I don't know if the driver saw it better. I didn't work there much longer after that. I work at a postal service. One day a box the size of a microwave entered. Whilst I was transferring this heavy box, I heard a low-pitched scream coming out of the box. I put it down and heard movement. Directly I called the security. Later that day I asked them what was inside, but because of the policy, they couldn't tell me. I still have no idea what it was. Whiskey Nostalgic replied and said, "Good God, that would have driven me crazy for the rest of my life." I've never worked in remote places, but vacationed regularly on Lake Superior, sailboat, until I got married. It's a tiny town, population about 450, where my family kept the boat. One race weekend, my dad and my brother crewed on a race, but it was unnaturally calm. So I was alone on the boat in this marina for just over 24 hours, as it was sail-only race. The marina is pretty dead because people are either gone elsewhere or in the race. Absolutely quiet night, not a breeze at all. Moon is out, I'm lying down reading a book, all comfy, space heater going. Picture a big narrow RV with hookups, and that's essentially the boat. It's just after midnight. Then I heard a thumping against the part of the hull that's just below the dock, and the step for me on getting on board, and a young kid's voice saying, "Permission to come aboard?" Guys, this is a marina where people stay for decades. I know if there's any kids around at all there are 15 at the youngest. I do not know this voice. I put my head up the ladder. Immediate sense of dread and fear. Two kids standing on the dock, maybe 10 and 6, pale, or it could have been the moon. I'm not stupid. My friend is Jewish. And by old custom, she told me she never answers to an unknown knock at night. Superstition. Some part of me wanted to, but I took the advice. Got up on deck, brandished a paddle lying around them, and yelled, "No, get away." Then I put a board over the door, opening, and pulled the top over. It was wooden and fiberglass pieces that slot in and pull out, so I could lock myself. Also, I studied in the northern Minnesota, immersion camp for language, and deep into the woods, Iron Range, near a wolf reintroduction area. I was lying on the edge of this big brick courtyard area, and heard howling and yipping, getting gradually louder as I looked into the stars. Nope, back into my cabin really fast, but I had to walk through forest to get there first. We have this rail yard we run to occasionally. Old coal mine in town, but most of the yard is surrounded by woods. Used to be a big operation with lots of tracks, buildings, storage tanks. You get the picture. Most of it's abandoned and overgrown. One end has an extraordinary dangerous bridge with no railings over a river. Whole place is straight out of a horror movie. No lights, of course. I absolutely hate the place, especially at night. I was working by myself one night switching cars. Only other person was my engineer, and he was half a mile away. I was crouched down, unlocking a switch, when all of a sudden I hear "bah" behind me. I jumped out of my skin, turned around and saw a goat staring back at me. A few months later, I was in a similar situation. Close to 3 AM and not a soul around, I thought. I was about halfway into the yard. My engineer was on the north end, and I was backing our train in. Another train was coming in the south end, heading north. I couldn't see them yet, but I knew they would be coming. Suddenly my radio started crackling. All I could make out were a few frantic words, and "he's dead" scared the poop out of me. I finished what we were doing and hurried back into the locomotive. Turns out a suicidal guy walked into the yard and curled up between the rails and the first train he saw. The crew thought it was just a garbage bag and ran it over. Middle of the night, dark clothes. Not that he could have been stopped in time anyway, but the conductor didn't want to freak out the next crew, so he walked back to toss to the side. That's when he saw it happened. I only walk through that yard with a pipe wrench or similar now. This happened to my friend. She was studying in her dad's office. Her dad is a professor at our college. At 3 AM since it was finals week, her dad worked in a building that was known to be haunted by people who jumped off of that building a couple decades ago. She said that sometime after midnight, she heard what sounded like a lecture going on, but she ignored it and assumed it was her lack of sleep. About an hour later, she felt this presence was sunk in her room, telling her to get out. But again, she ignored it. She said she had a negative feeling and felt more and more intense. All of a sudden, some sort of gassy stuff appeared between her face and the laptop with a distinctive scent. When she tried to fan her hand through the gas, she even felt how dense this gas was. Of course, she sprinted to her car right after that. I don't have an actual job working in a remote location, but I've gone to a few places to do some research / investigate a few different things, or isolate so I can focus on the project. A few years ago, I started getting interested in freelance investigative journalism after I came across some shady information. Anyway, last summer I decided to rent out a cabin up in the mountains, so I could be alone and focus all my attention on the files I was working through. It was secluded and didn't have a TV or very good cell reception, so I didn't have very many distractions. The cabin was at the end of a long gravel/dirt road, and it was pretty forested area, so it was pitch black once the sun went down. It was very late by the time I made it to the cabin, but as I passed through the nearest town to get there, someone told me it was dangerous for me to travel alone. That kind of shook me a bit because of what I was looking into. I also got the impression that someone wanted to let me know that I was being watched. The first thing I did the following day was buy a gun. I absolutely love stories like that. Horror stories, creepy stories, keep them coming. I'd love to listen to them. Comment down below if you've had any creepy or horror experiences. Again, I'd love to know. Personally, I don't have any horror stories or creepy experiences. I mean, where I work at a warehouse, there's been some strange noises here and there when I'm alone at night time, but other than that, nothing too scary. But I'd love to know yours, so please do comment down below. And comment down below if you'd like a part 2. Thanks for listening, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. This video is sponsored by me. Sweet Mouthful Mixes brings pick and mix sweets straight to your door. Choose up to 10 scoops of your favourite sweets, or pick a pre-packed bag. Sweet Mouthful Mixes has a 5-star hygiene rating, and full PPE is worn whilst making the bags. With over 50 sweets to choose from, you're guaranteed to find something you like. Treat yourself. You've earned it. Get 20% off with code REDDIT.